On this Friday night, the different response to two nautical tragedies. Theirs wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime voyage, but their one shot at a better life.
We can do things a different way.
The calls for a quicker response as questions mount over the submersible lost at sea.
The NHL is moving backwards.
The NHL on thin ice as onlookers react to a jersey-banning fiasco. Ukrainian superhumans, how life-saving prosthetics are helping build a better tomorrow in the war-torn nation.
We are building the future culture right here, right now.
Plus, Parliament's massive overhaul. A look inside Canada's largest ever heritage project and its multi-billion-dollar price tag.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. We're learning more tonight about the experimental and ultimately flawed design of a submersible that imploded at the Titanic wreck site. The wreckage and the 5 people who died now rest at sea, not far from the Titanic. But just a week earlier, there was another nautical disaster off the coast of Greece that devastated many more families. At least 700 migrants died when their ship capsized. And it's a dangerous route. According to the United Nations, 160,000 people risked it all to cross the Mediterranean to Europe last year alone. Close to 2,500 others, they didn't make it. The unequal level of attention and urgency surrounding these disasters hasn't gone unnoticed. And as Neetu Garcha reports, it'll take a global effort to change.
A pregnant woman died trying to reach the Canary Islands on Tuesday. Her body found in a boat with more than 50 migrants. The rest survived the journey. Unlike hundreds who were feared dead off the coast of Greece when this crowded fishing boat sank last week, it was one of the Mediterranean's deadliest migrant shipwrecks in years, a story swept from the spotlight.
It's even more than indifference. I mean, it's shocking sang-froid. I mean, to be able to close your eyes to the situation of what's happening in the Mediterranean.
Their plight overshadowed by the race to find 5 people on the Titan submersible.
That governments leapt in so quickly.
University of Toronto professor Joan Samalchik says this needs to be a wake-up call for lawmakers in Western nations who create policy around selling arms for war and don't seem to see the connection to the plight of refugees affected by those wars.
And in my long history of working with refugees, I have never met one who wanted to leave their home. It was really a push out of desperation.
The response to the submarine should show us that, you know, we can come together with a huge international, no expenses spared rescue operation for 5 people lost in the Atlantic.
At least 350 Pakistanis were on the capsized boat off Greece. DNA samples of more than 200 families have been collected to try and identify victims.
I've been working in Greece 5 years. I was myself in the sea rescuing people. And I've seen with my own eyes how the Greek Coast Guard is treating the refugees.
Humanitarian Salem Aldin questions why Greek authorities didn't immediately intervene given how overcrowded and unseaworthy the vessel was.
There is waves. It's not just that you can tow a boat like that without knowing there is a huge risk that something can happen.
Advocates say this should be a moment of accountability and action.
We can do things a different way. It is not inevitable that so many people should drown.
Especially in light of reports the U.S. Navy detected a catastrophic implosion days earlier, yet more international resources were deployed to assist in the search, and no end in sight to the migrant and refugee crisis. Neetu Garcha, Global News.
Hundreds of migrants near the Canary Islands are recovering after being rescued off the coast of West Africa. 227 people need emergency help yesterday en route to Spain. 4 boats have required rescue in the region in the past 48 hours. And summer is the busiest time of year for attempted crossings. The Canary Islands have become the main starting point for migrants trying to reach Spain. Canadian vessels are returning home after searching for that lost submersible off Newfoundland. Multiple agencies from Canada and the U.S. are investigating, but it's complicated. And tonight there are new questions around the vessel's structural engineering. Mike Armstrong joins us now from St. John's. Mike, it's becoming clear that some of the warnings were ignored.
Well, Farah, think about this. The Titan was officially experimental. It wasn't certified. That means OceanGate couldn't even dive with it legally here in the harbor in St. John's. They had to take it out into international waters.
So OceanGate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear.
One of the people now speaking out is James Cameron. The director of the Titanic movie has made 33 dives to the wreck. He also built his own submarine. Cameron says he didn't believe in the Titan's carbon fiber hull and regrets not speaking out earlier.
It's the OceanGate Titanic experience.
Look, we celebrate innovation, right? But you shouldn't be using an experimental vehicle for paying passengers.
The search continues at the site. The U.S. Coast Guard says it's mapping the 2 debris fields found on the ocean floor. There may now be overlapping investigations. Canada's Transportation Safety Board confirmed Friday it is investigating the Titan tragedy. Also, Global News has learned the TSB is in negotiations with the U.S. Transportation Safety Board and the U.S. Coast Guard over roles and responsibilities. In terms of jurisdiction, it is complicated. The vessel was lost about 680 kilometers from St. John's in international waters. The victims were from 4 different countries: Pakistan, the US, France, and the UK. And the ship that launched the Titan, the Polar Prince, is Canadian. Add to that the fact something like this tragedy isn't covered by the United Nations Law of the Seas.
It covers things like extraction of minerals from the seabed and fishing, but it doesn't really cover things like submersibles.
Treat it like a crime scene.
Oceanographer David Gallo hopes there are answers that lead to safer vehicles. This disaster is the first implosion of a submersible with passengers on board. He says it's something the community has feared, but expected.
We knew that we were lucky to go this long with manned submersibles and not have that kind of an accident. And yet, when it happened, we were all stunned. Like, it happened.
Now, TSB investigators are on their way here to St. John's, as is the ship that launched the Titan Sunday. The Polar Prince is expected here in the harbor early Saturday morning. Farah?
Mike Armstrong in St. John's. Thanks, Mike. The Royal Canadian Air Force has released the names of the 2 pilots killed in that helicopter crash this week. The Chinook crashed into the Ottawa River in Petawawa, Ontario, shortly after midnight on Tuesday. The bodies of 2 pilots were recovered and have now been identified as 32-year-old Captain David Domagala and 53-year-old Captain Marc Larouche. 2 crew members survived and they were treated in hospital for minor injuries and have been released. The Premier of New Brunswick's facing a growing caucus revolt that could cost him his job and even possibly plunge the province into a snap election. Today, a longtime Progressive Conservative Party loyalist became the 2nd MLA to quit Blaine Higgs' cabinet. As David Akin reports, that resignation could be the most serious challenge yet to Higgs' leadership.
A long way in terms of...
Trevor Holder is the longest-serving member of New Brunswick's legislature. He's won his St. John area riding 7 times and served in the cabinets of 3 different Progressive Conservative premiers. But today, he said he'd had enough of Blaine Higgs. Under the leadership of Premier Higgs, Holder wrote, caucus has been less about consensus and more about him getting his own way. His lack of empathy, as well as his inability to listen, demonstrates a further inability to lead the citizens of New Brunswick. Holder is the 2nd cabinet minister to quit in the last 2 weeks, and his resignation came hours after a group of PC Riding Association presidents released a letter saying the grassroots of the party wanted Higgs to go.
He's certainly not communicating with the general population of the PC party of New Brunswick, and I think that's upset a lot of people.
The crisis was sparked over what is known as Policy 713. That's a policy designed to protect LGBTQ2+ students. Higgs changed that rule to require that teachers must inform parents about a student who changes names or pronouns. LGBTQ2+ advocates said that move could endanger some students. But that controversy quickly morphed into a challenge of Higgs' overall leadership style.
It's not just one issue. I've said that repeatedly. I'm finding that the party's drifting away from my values. And the PC party that I grew up in was a team-based approach.
The core criticism, a premier who is high-handed, imperious, and aloof.
Blaine Higgs is a very competent man. He is a very decisive man. but he's had some missteps in the last couple of months.
The presidents of more than half of the province's PC riding associations are now calling on the party's governing council to call a formal leadership review.
But it is odd to launch a leadership review of a sitting premier. That tells you something. That tells you there's a lot of disaffection.
Higgs has been New Brunswick's premier since 2018, and he says he has every intention of holding on to that job. David Akin, Global News.
Political divisions are also driving controversy in the hockey world. The NHL announced as of next season, special jerseys will no longer be worn by players during warm-up. The custom uniforms allow teams to mark special events and important causes, including pride celebrations. As Jackson Prosco explains, many fear this move signals the league is giving in to rising hostility against gay and trans communities.
NHL players wear warm-up jerseys to honor the military, for cancer awareness, and for Lunar New Year. There are jerseys celebrating Indigenous culture and jerseys celebrating the LGBTQ+ community, but no more.
The way the league puts it is that it became such a distraction, that it rose to such a level of taking away from like the product on the ice, that they decided not to use any specialty jerseys in warm-ups.
The league's decision to bench all cause-based jerseys is because of one cause: pride.
My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion.
This past season, several players refused to don pride uniforms, which quickly spiraled into controversy. And so the league has called a timeout.
This is a league that's terrified of winding up on Fox News. It's terrified of a Bud Light-like boycott. It's terrified that they might alienate that kind of portion of their audience, bigoted as it might be.
It's unfortunate that in this day and age that we are getting that sort of reaction.
It's dismaying to those who've worked to increase LGBTQ+ participation in sport. It comes at a worrying time as major corporations in the U.S. and Canada face backlash for acknowledging Pride Month.
Well over 95% of the players who proudly donned those Pride jerseys for pregame warm-ups were able to use their visibility to help the community.
Though NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says Pride nights and other specialty nights will continue, players can now only model specialty jerseys so long as they're not on the ice. The Junior League Oshawa Generals believe the big league has it all wrong.
It's a stepping stone of growing with the community, and now the NHL is moving backwards.
After years of promoting hockey for everyone, the NHL finds itself at the center of the very controversy it was trying to avoid, as its rinks get dragged into the political arena. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
The Ukrainians turning tragedy into triumph. Coming up, an inside look at the organization helping war victims become superhumans. Plus, historic highs in Beijing, millions sweltering in record-breaking temperatures in China's capital. In Ukraine, Russia's war is ravaging not only property, but people. Drones, missile attacks, mines, and combat situations are leading to countless Ukrainians losing limbs. That's where an organization called Superhumans comes in. It has a goal of creating a new culture, not of acceptance, but of pride. It's ensuring amputees are set up to live full lives where they're envied for their bionic parts. Crystal Gamansing and video journalist Braden Laddam were invited to the Superhumans facility in Lviv to see the transformations firsthand.
Super. Walking onto the grounds of the Superhuman Center, you're struck by a wave of ambition, courage, and camaraderie. Sergei Kopashuk is teased by the CEO of the organization. She tells him now that he's mastered the stairs, they should discharge him. He retorts, saying as much as he likes it here, he'll have to leave sometime.
Sergei is amazing because he was the one who was very quick to rehabilitate, and he started working on for a day.
The Superhumans philosophy is not about what's been lost, but what's been added. I've been on my prosthetic for a month now, he says. He admits it wasn't easy. They're not his legs, but he's mastering them, and he's decorated them. Hopeshuk's left leg was torn off, the right one badly damaged during shelling. The 25-year-old soldier smiles when he talks about being upgraded to a cyborg. Those admitted to the Superhuman Center are initially seen by a fellow amputee. The team is explicit in its belief that able-bodied people cannot grasp the loss or the lifelong pain and struggle of having a prosthetic, which will always require adjustments. But they can help to reshape how society views them.
We believe that if we have superhumans on the streets of Ukraine, it's going to be a different trajectory for the country. And if our kids are raised in the context of superhumans, not in the context of victims of war, we're going to have a different country.
Some prosthetic pieces are made locally at the Superhuman Center. Other components are sourced from manufacturers until the work can be done in-house. They're also building temporary living space next door and want to add a surgical ward and hire their own medical staff. This facility really is meant to be a one-stop shop, from manufacturing downstairs to the rehabilitation floor. And up here, people are doing everything from exercises to even having their prosthetics adjusted to make walking a little bit easier. Ultimately, they want to see 5 of these facilities right across Ukraine. Many people have complications and have to start over, as I did after surgery, says Yevhen, who only gave us his first name. He just recently started to receive care at the Superhuman Center. He says it's more progressive, more prepared to help people like him. The facility has some big backers, including American Howard Buffett, son of Warren Buffett, who's donated more than $16 million to Superhumans and just recently visited the facility. The estimated operating cost is about $1 million per month. Olga Rudneva believes when people see what they're doing and why they're doing it, more partners will come on board.
We are building the future culture right here, right now, with these amazing people who gave their health and parts of their body for the victory.
Looking ahead to the future is motivation for Sergey. I have a son in 2 months, and my dream is to meet my wife from the maternity hospital standing on my own 2 feet. A dream that's getting closer step by step, day by day.
Super.
Crystal Gamansing, Global News, Lviv, Ukraine.
Bracing for Brett. Ahead, concerns about flash floods as the tropical storm hits the eastern Caribbean. Rough weather is slamming the Caribbean. Tropical storm Brett bringing winds more than 100 kilometers an hour and up to 25 centimeters of rain in some areas. There are concerns flash floods and storm surges could get worse. Brett is expected to dissipate on Sunday, but another storm, Cindy, has formed behind it. It's the first time 2 storms have formed in the tropical Atlantic in June. Beijing is experiencing a prolonged heat wave, the city recording its hottest June day ever. The temperature climbed to 41.1 degrees on Thursday, the highest since record-keeping began more than 60 years ago. And that's about 10 degrees above the normal high temperatures. The heat prompted officials to upgrade its warning system to red, alerting people temperatures above 40 degrees will continue for several days. China's broken many heat records this year, including in Shanghai, which recorded its hottest May day in more than a century. Canada's largest fixer-upper. Next, a look at the multi-billion-dollar renovations to Parliament Hill. Tonight, we have an inside look at the largest heritage project in Canadian history, the major renovations to Parliament Hill's centre block. More than 450 construction workers are wrapping up the first phase of the multi-billion-dollar upgrades to the historic building, a monumental task that began 4 years ago and is expected to take another decade to complete. Taria Isri takes us on a tour.
The Peace Tower has watched over Parliament Hill for almost a century. Now it's getting the view of Centre Block below the surface. The heritage building is being stripped down to the bone to modernize one of Canada's most storied symbols.
We've faced a number of challenges, but the project remains on track.
The pandemic, the trucker convoy, and a public sector strike.
Shut it down!
But things are moving along. The earliest completion date is slated for 2032. The government insists the $4.5 billion reno is on budget and worth the massive price tag.
It is I think, of tremendous value to have both to keep hold of our country's traditions, but also to build forward.
They're building forward by digging a pit 23 meters deep, removing thousands of truckloads of bedrock. Part of a delicate operation to lift center block off its concrete foundation for a seismic upgrade to make it better withstand the next earthquake.
You can see the
crumbling mortar, damaged sculptures, old pipes. It's taking an army just to bring center block up to code. This is the House of Commons. When it was built a century ago, there were 230 MPs. Since then, that number has grown significantly, and the members of parliament need extra space. The now unrecognizable house is being reconfigured to be more accessible and more spacious for the 343 MPs coming back here. They moved out in 2018 to their temporary home, the West Block.
This is the PEI window. So
20,000 heritage items have been removed for restoration, including light fixtures from the Hall of Honor, blackened from the days you could smoke inside Parliament. A new welcome centre will be the public's front door to Parliament. The design is part airport entrance, part museum exhibit.
To help understand parliamentary democracy, what happens here, why it matters, and why it's relevant to Canadians.
A massive renovation to bring the home of Canadian democracy into the 21st century. Taria Isri, Global News, Ottawa.
And that's Global National for this Friday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole team here, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is this beautiful pink sky over Sundre, Alberta. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow.